In 1990, 3% of American men said they had no close friends. By 2021, that number was 15%, 5 times more men, alone, in the space of one generation. And it lands hardest on the man who retires, looks around at 65, and realizes the people who really knew him are gone. Stay with me, because the fourth thing in this video is the exact moment most men lose their friend group, and almost none of them see it coming. Here is the full picture. In 1990, 55% of American men said they had 6 or more close friends. By 2021, that number had been cut in half, down to 27%. That data comes from the Survey Center on American Life, part of the American Enterprise Institute, published in May 2021, based on their American Perspective Survey. This was not a men-only problem. Across all Americans, the share reporting 3 or fewer close friends nearly doubled, from 27% in 1990 to 49% in 2021, and the share reporting 0 close friends for everyone rose from 3% to 12% over that same span. But men fell furthest. Men went from having the fullest friend circles in 1990 to being the most likely group to have none at all by 2021. The takeaway is simple. This did not happen because men suddenly got worse at making friends. Something structural changed underneath them. And retirement is where that structural change becomes impossible to ignore. Ask a man in his 60s who his closest friends are, and often, without realizing it, he will name people from a job he does not have anymore. For decades, the workplace quietly did a job nobody assigned it. It put the same men in the same room, 5 days a week for years. Friendship did not require effort there. It required showing up. You did not have to plan it, schedule it, or drive anywhere. It was built into the day. Retirement removes that machine overnight. One day there is a building full of familiar faces. The next day there is a house. The friendships that were held together by proximity, by shared coffee breaks, by walking past the same desk every morning, do not automatically survive the move home. They needed the structure more than anyone realized while it was still there. Imagine a man who spent 30 years having lunch with the same 3 coworkers. He never called it friendship. He just called it Tuesday. Then he retires and Tuesday stops happening, and so, quietly does the friendship. This is the first real crack. But it is not the only one. There used to be a name for the spots where men gathered without an appointment. Sociologists called them third places. Not home, not work, but somewhere in between. The barber shop, the union hall, the corner diner, the hardware store where you always ran into somebody. Those places did not require you to be interesting or to plan ahead. You just had to be a regular. Over years, regulars became familiar faces, and familiar faces became friends. Many of those places have simply disappeared from American towns, replaced by errands you run alone, in a car, through a drive-through window. When the third place goes, so does the low-effort version of friendship it used to produce. What is left requires actual initiative. A phone call, a text, an invitation and initiative is exactly what a lot of men were never asked to practice, because work and third places used to do it for them. That gap does not fill itself. And for a lot of men, the person who quietly filled it for years was someone else entirely. Here is the moment I promised you. It usually is not a single event. It is a slow handoff, and most men never notice it happening. In a lot of marriages over the years, the wife becomes the one who remembers birthdays, organizes the holiday dinner, keeps in touch with the old friends, and plans the get-togethers. It is not that men can't do this. It is that somewhere along the way, they stopped having to. The social calendar became her job, quietly, the same way the friend group at work became automatic. Nobody negotiated it. It just settled that way. That works fine for years, sometimes decades. Then something changes the arrangement. Retirement removes the workplace half of a man's social life. And if a marriage ends through divorce or through loss, it can remove the other half too, the half that was being managed on his behalf the whole time. This is the moment. Work is gone. The third places are gone. And the person who was running the social calendar is no longer there to run it. A man can wake up one morning and realize the machinery that produced his entire social life has quietly shut down, piece by piece, without a single dramatic event marking the day it happened. This is not a story about being unlovable or incapable. It is a story about relying, for most of adult life, on systems that were never permanent. This is not framed as a health video, and it isn't one, but it is worth naming. Once, what is quietly at stake because it explains why this deserves more than a shrug. The National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine reported in 2020 that about 24% of Americans aged 65 and older, roughly 1 in 4, are considered socially isolated. The same report found that 43% of adults 60 and older report feeling lonely, compared to 35% of adults 45 and older. Isolation is not the same thing as being alone by choice for an afternoon. It is a pattern over time of having no one to call. That same report noted that social isolation is associated with roughly a 50% higher risk of developing dementia, and that among heart failure patients specifically, loneliness is associated with nearly 4 times the risk of death. I am mentioning these numbers exactly once, and only as the stakes, not as a diagnosis and not as advice. The point is not to scare you. The point is that this is worth taking seriously, the same way you'd take seriously a leak in the roof before it becomes a bigger problem. The good news is that this particular problem has never required a doctor to solve it. It has always been solved by other people. Here is what men have historically done, long before anyone called it a crisis. They joined something with a repeating schedule, not a one-time event. A weekly card game, a regular Tuesday round of golf, a standing coffee at the same diner at the same hour. The repetition did the work that the office used to do. You did not need 6 new best friends. You needed one standing appointment with 2 or 3 familiar faces. They reached back before they reached out. An old coworker, an old neighbor, someone from years ago they had simply lost touch with, not because of a falling out, just because life got busy. A short phone call. I was thinking about the old days, how have you been? Restarted more friendships than any new hobby ever did. They picked something with a task attached to it. Volunteering at a fire department, a church group, a community garden, a workshop. Anything where men worked side by side on something concrete. Shared work has always built friendship faster than shared conversation, because it removes the pressure to perform and gives people something to talk about that isn't themselves. And they let the first invitation be small. Not a request for deep conversation. Just wanna grab coffee Thursday. Nobody has ever rebuilt a friendship by announcing they were lonely. They rebuilt it one small, low-stakes invitation at a time. None of this requires being a different kind of man. It only requires treating friendship the way you once treated a job, something you show up to on a schedule, whether or not you feel like it that particular day. So here is the shape of it. Men went from having full friend groups in 1990 to a 15% share, with none at all by 2021. Work third places, and a spouse quietly managing the social calendar were doing more of the job than anyone realized. And the fix has never been complicated. A standing appointment, an old name reached out to, a small task shared with other people. This is educational content, not financial advice, and nothing here is medical advice either. It is a look at how men's social lives are actually built and how they quietly come apart. Here is a question worth sitting with. Who was the last friend you let drift? Not out of any argument, just out of distance. And what would it cost you to send one short message this week? If videos like this one are useful to you, consider staying with After 60 Compass. We do the homework so you don't have to. One honest, well-sourced conversation at a time.